The story, Journey to the West, has somewhat of a special significance for this channel. For example, one of Kid Me's favorite animes is based upon it, and it's also the inspiration for the action-adventure cult classic, Enslaved: Odyssey to the West, which is the very first game that I've ever reviewed here on the YouTubes. The classic story resurfaced once more into the cultural zeitgeist in the form of Black Myth: Wukong, another action-adventure game whose journey to its release wasn't exactly the smoothest one. In case you didn't know, allegedly, everyone's favorite DEI consulting group, Sweet Baby Inc., approached the studio developing the game to offer their valuable services. But when the studio saw the results of said services, they calmly and politely said,
"No, it'll be fine,"
and declined their offer. As insinuated by the Baby's own founder on a GDC conference in 2019,
put this stuff up to your higher-ups, and if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
They ordered their ideologically captured brethren from the Games Journalists Guild to do a defamation attack on the studio, based on mistranslated emails. Since it's not 2016 anymore, and the general public is much smarter from where they get their news from, the media attacks against the game caused it to be bought around 18 million times as of the time of writing this script, which I don't think that this was the result that the Baby was hoping for. Among these 18 million buyers was also me, the creator of the very same video that you're watching right now. And I'm here to share with y'all what is my opinion of the game that the so-called mainstream wanted so desperately to fail. Black Myth: Wukong is an action-adventure Souls-light that also has some boss rushy tendencies, in which you play as the Destined One, an anthropomorphic monkey man that's been sent out on a perilous journey to find the 6 relics of Sun Wukong that got scattered around all over China after our boy got sealed off in a rock. All of this transpired because Sun Wukong tried to fight a group of pompous giants called the Celestial Court, who, after making him a Buddha, wouldn't let him monkey around in peace on his mountain. To be completely honest with you guys, I didn't care at all about the rest of the story, but I can't really tell if it was because I'm programmed not to pay too much attention on a narrative of a game that has Souls-like elements, or if it was the writer's inability to capture the attention of my terribly scattered brain. Nonetheless, the result was that I stumbled through the story in a state of almost complete apathy. Even though I didn't pay too much attention on the game's narrative, there were still elements of it that I very much appreciated. For example, despite the janky AI lip-syncing, the English dub of the game was pretty well done, and the few fights present in the cutscenes were masterfully choreographed and shot with great impact. I'm also a fan of the short animated story vignettes at the end of each chapter, whose quality and variety of animation styles was truly impressive. Black Myth: Wukong is a fast-paced beat-em-up with heavy emphasis placed on staying mobile and outmaneuvering your opponents, while you explore gorgeously rendered and relatively big levels inhabited by quite a large number of bloodthirsty bosses. In the first chapter of the game, the ratio between exploration and boss fighting is largely in favor of the latter, which gave me a slightly bad first impression of the game, because I personally prefer the exploration segments of these types of games. Fortunately, from the second chapter onward, the levels open up dramatically, and the frequency of the boss battles is slightly lessened, which is a game design balance that is much more to my liking. Now that I'm sort of on the topic of boss fights, I feel that it's appropriate to mention that I found it a bit more difficult to dodge their attacks compared to the bosses in other Souls-likes. And it's because a lot of the bosses in Wukong tend to twirl around their weapons, which makes it difficult to tell which move is an attack and what is an aesthetically pleasing misdirection or a wind-up. The situation is not too dire though, because thanks to the admittedly large amount of options that we have to fight these acrobatically proficient bossmen, the task of defeating them is not only doable, but even slightly easier compared to any other Dark Souls inspired game. The basic beating is done by using a beautifully girthy, elongating staff. That can be used in 3 different stances, which are essentially 3 different types of heavy attacks that are there to be changed up depending on the situation at hand and on our own personal playstyles. The style that I used the most was the Smash style, because it's the one that deals the most amount of damage out of all of them, so I found it to be the most suitable for my approach to battles. Then on top of that, we can also equip ourselves with up to 4 spells to aid us into our squabbles. But what I found to be disappointing about this is that you can't fully customize your loadout, because different spells can only be assigned to specific face buttons, which means that I can't have a spell loadout that has the enemy freeze ability and the stone body ability at the same time, because both of them can only be assigned on the X button on an Xbox controller. If you thought that these are all of our fighting options, well, think again, because we can even transform ourselves into enemies and even bosses to use their respective movesets and abilities. It sucks that these transformations are not made useful in the exploration segments of the game. You know, kinda like a Metroidvania game, when you need a specific power to access a previously inaccessible area of a level. Yeah, that would be fun, wouldn't it? But maybe in the sequel, right? All of these abilities have their own respective skill trees that can be upgraded in the pause menu or in the shrines that also double as checkpoints. If you're not entirely happy with how you've spent your upgrade points, you can always respec your character, which encourages experimentation and allows us to much more easily make a character build that matches our own respective playstyles. Oh, and before I forget, I also think that it's somewhat important to point out that exploration in this game is much less deadly compared to its Souls-like cousins, be it because of the much more liberal use of invisible walls that make it harder for us to fall to our doom, or the huge amount of combat options that we have that make enemy encounters much more manageable, or be it the simple fact that we don't lose our upgrade currencies upon our demise. It all contributes to a much more relaxed exploration experience, which I don't think it's good or bad, it just is what it is. There isn't much for me to say about the game's visuals that you haven't already seen for yourselves, but I'll say it anyway. The game looks pretty darn good, and it can look even better if you have the hardware to run it in its full-on ray tracing mode, which enhances the global illumination of the game, the shadows, the reflections, and you can even get real-time water caustics. It also helps that all of the game's levels are very different from one another, which gives us a chance to experience these advanced lighting techniques in a variety of different biomes. The levels are also very densely detailed, thanks to Unreal Engine 5's nanite technology, which allows the game devs to use insanely complex models with minimal hit to performance. The sound design is also quite competent, and it can be very impactful when needed. But the music was appropriate to the point of inaudibility, except for the tunes produced by this absolute legend.
九天即是全无力，大圣天蓬造虎旗，枪刀剑剑黄不比，时候死你不死你。
From the first time that Black Myth Wukong was unveiled on the internet, it seemed that it entered in the good graces of the majority of gamers. But I was sort of indifferent about it. Now that I've played the game, I think that it's a fun action game with a solid foundation in its game design that has a huge potential for improvement in its inevitable sequel. I feel kinda sad that it got dragged into the retarded drama that I talked about in the introduction of this video, but I'm also hopeful that it served as a strong example to our Western developers of what their audience actually wants, which is a fun, well-designed game that's completely devoid of divisive identity politics. Thank you guys for watching, and if I manage to make another video, I hope I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day!